So when it comes to storing your
Yes.
collection,
what I started doing is going to this flat file storage option. It's easier for me to go through and look at them if I want.
Right.
This is the way you have to go through them before, yeah. And then of course these flat ones were folded ones would get shipped to me, and I would just leave them in there. These are folded ones here, and I could have left them folded, but I'd rather flatten them out once and then really never fold them, because when you open it, you're eroding the image on the fold lines, and you're making it more brittle.
right? Yeah, every time you unfold it.
Every time you unfold
So
it.
how long does the treatment take from
Sort of to have it
curling
flattened out,
to,
yeah.
to staying flat when you take stuff off?
I have stuff in here I put a few weeks ago that are still giving me problems.
Oh,
You know, they're still trying to. If I pull this if I pull that all the way out,
just roll back
it's
up.
yeah, a little bit, yeah. So a couple weeks, usually do it. What I'm expecting is, and as you know, we live in New Orleans. I'm waiting for when the summer comes and there's more humidity.
Yeah.
They'll flatten out just fine. These have been sitting here for weeks, and if I take that bean off, it may roll up slightly.
Do they ever get to the point from this where they stay fully flat?
Sure. Yeah. One thing I want to mention on the side, there may be a few other people who are going to watch this. They're certainly more knowledgeable than me. I want to let everybody know. I know that I should have sheets of acid-free paper in between.
I was actually going to ask
one.
you about acid-free, because I know that's a big thing with framing them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm just not willing yet to invest the money in a sheet in between each one.
Right.
You know, a lot of my stuff isn't, we're not talking about War of the Worlds. We're not talking about stuff that was printed in the 50s. Now, I do have a few things like that. I have a Cat on a Hot Tin Roof half sheet in the restroom downstairs that's has been framed, and of course it's acid-free backing on that, not glued to it, but just up against it. So some stuff like that. But my collection is more Silver Age as opposed to the Gold Age stuff. Which
the other thing too is these aren't quite as brittle.
No,
right? I mean, I know we frame
that's
it.
an excellent
framers
point.
will sell it to the point of where you're trying to frame the Declaration of Independence
Yes.
here. I mean, this paper
Yes.
and this printing process is not as fragile. And
no, that's a great point.
I imagine if you just slap one of these in a regular frame, it's not going to deteriorate overnight.
No, as a matter of fact, there's a good chance that this poster on this type of paper, which is different than the clay-coated paper that you typically saw some of the older stuff done on, or the stone lithograph, of the 20s and 30s and some of the 40s. Those are brittle by the time we show up in the 80s, 90s. Right. People that weren't as well taken care of and that sort of thing, and so that you want to be very careful with.
At least from my amateur understanding, it almost seems like once they realized that there might be a market, or these posters were a commodity part of the film process and the memorabilia, they started getting made a little bit better, even the ones that are in the theaters, as opposed to the paper quality. And whether that's just technological innovations over.
I think there's that.
Yeah.
I think, but I think it's also the light box stuff.
Yeah.
That the clay coated paper was still, the very brittle clay coated paper was still being used around Star Wars time and all that. But when those light boxes showed up to really make a pop, a presentation, because the VCR market had started to keep people at home again. Remember, before it was the television, so they made the screens bigger in the theaters, and then there was VCRs and home box office. They went from freestanding theaters to these mall theaters. So you just couldn't help but, look what's coming out. And I don't want to have to wait until that comes out on Betamax or something like that. And so I think it's always been this way to get people more and more interested. So if you take a clay-coated regular poster from the 70s and you put it in a light box, it's just thin, and you can see it doesn't pop. But so the paper's thicker, the inks are I don't know how to describe what the inks are, but it lends itself to much more of a pop, of a attention grabber, that sort of thing. Okay. And so I think that's why part of it has become easier to handle and not as brilliant.
So how many? What's the totals, Joe? Do you keep an inventory? Do you have a?
I started
have them written down anywhere.
I used to when I had about 50 or 60 of them, and then that went by the wayside. And I think,
because I know in a tube like this you can roll a bunch.
Well, look down in there.
Oh wow, you got a bunch.
Yeah. And some of these are television posters. Some of these are 5 and 6 copies of the same thing.
Wow.
Some of it's a trade I might have got I haven't looked at in 10 years because, like I said before, I owned a poster shop for a short time in the early 90s before people, can I just get these? Aren't these just video posters? No. A lot of education went into it. And I think that I have 1,000 or more, maybe a few thousand. I don't know yet, which is what prompted this flat storage idea.
Yeah, this seems like a good idea as far as inventory, or
right.
A lot easier way to catalog them.
That and again, so when I want to enjoy looking at it, I'm not constantly folding the folds, because obviously you can't hang up everything that you like.
You got a big house, but you could cover every wall in your entire roof with not even a quarter of probably the posters that you have.
And I have a wife.
Right.
So that she's been very kind to let me put up the stuff we have, and we're still going to put up some more things. Part of that also was to look through to see what we really wanted, because she really likes the classic stuff, like...
Yep. Christmas Story.
Right. Well, even more classic. Behind that Christmas Story is My Fair Lady.
Oh, My Fair Lady.
Is behind that particular one. And when Christmas rolls around, we just switch them out. Right. So she likes the My Fair Ladies, The Sound of Music, which is one of my all-time favorite. But we're kind of at a stopping point with what I can afford insofar as the classics. I'm not going to buy a Breakfast at Tiffany's. What I'd have to do is sell about 40 or 50 of the ones that I like to get just one. That's $8,000.
Right.
You might be able to get it for $6,000 if it's fairly dirty. So I pull stuff out that was in that I have, like the Sting. It's in one of these drawers. There it is. Because I had it out. This is a tri-folded one where it never went out. It was never sent out. Which I'll explain that in a second insofar as the collecting world kind of stuff. So this looks classic enough.
Right.
And it's a movie I really like, where both my wife and I are happy about it.
And Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw.
Come on, you Jaws fan. You can't leave
Absolutely.
him out.
You're right. And this is Amsel art, which he signed in the table there.
He's a poster artist, I'm assuming.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, he's the one that did the Raiders of the Lost Ark. With this particular poster, there's a few things with it. I bought one that was folded all the way, and you could see had been hanging up at some point.
Right.
When this one came up for sale at auction, and it was tri-folded, and you can tell it hadn't been opened and closed very much, because see, the art is still there on the folds.
On the crease there,
yeah. After a while, the paint or the print wears away. And so this one is the one that I'm going to hang up, and we already have a spot for it and all that. But then when I got it and I started looking at it, what's it missing? It's missing the ratings box.
Oh, okay.
My other one has the ratings box. And this was most probably came out of when the National Screen Services started selling off, when they were shutting down and they started selling off their warehouse stuff. This is tri-folded because it was never sent out. It was just left on a pallet somewhere or whatever with probably a stack of 100 or more.
Okay.
And I think that this was made for the international campaign, because internationally they don't have ratings the way we do.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
They would hand fold the final crease and they would stick it into a film can and they would send it off. So imagine a film from 73, say a few months before, and they're shipping you the film, or they're shipping you the some of the other materials like the an advance reel or a teaser reel or whatever. And so when you get maybe a movie that happened that year that's actually playing that week, you're going to get the materials for what's going to show up next week, next month, or if it's a teaser sheet, next year. And that's how it was cheaper to do that than rolling them up. But again, the light box is what made them start shipping them out rolled up, because if folded in a light box, you see the lines look terrible.
Right.
Well, I was sad when I got this, because the bottom of it is you could see it's
got some damage there.
Right. And this, it's just, they have something called linen backing or paper backing or that sort of stuff. It's not worth it for a sheet like this. Some of the older sheets that I have, you're going to want a linen back at some point, paper back at some point, so that they stay viable. But this, that's printed on both sides, if you're going to show this, you don't have to show it in a light box, but that's kind of the way it's meant. And of course, it'll make that pop. The fire will pop. The date, the coming date, and certainly the lightning type stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you do? In 100 years, what do you do with this?
Right.
Because certainly it would be worth it by then. Especially with this teaser sheet. As you know, I love my teaser sheets, because there's just less of them made.
Right.